Welcome to the Top Agent Happy Hour podcast, where you'll learn how to build a real estate career worth celebrating. Join us as real estate's top producers, industry insiders, and team leaders pull back the curtain, sharing secrets and actionable ideas for attracting clients, delivering great service, and closing deals. You'll also go beyond the deal, learning how to connect with your why, be authentically awesome, and build your will to win. And now let's join your real estate rock star hosts from Pearson Smith Realty, Richard Bridges and Dustin Fox.
All right, welcome to the Top Agent Happy Hour, where we interview top agents from across the country and find out exactly how they uniquely grow their business. Today we have a very special guest, Richard Bridges of Pearson Smith Realty, both a broker and an agent. So welcome to the Top Agent Happy Hour podcast, Richard.
Dude, stoked to be here today. Even more excited that you get to interview me. So this is awesome. Thanks for having me on the show, and looking forward to today's episode for sure.
So I'm excited about this one because a lot of the Pearson agents probably don't know the history, and you're not a blowhard like I am. So you kind of keep your cards close to the vest, and people don't know like your history and the production that you've done. So start us off with a little story about your business.
So I think it's good. I'll just give you some context. So I grew up, I tell people that I'm an SOB. I'm a son of a broker. And so that comes with some good things and some bad things. I was exposed to the real estate business at a really young age. You know, my first recollection of real estate transactions was, I went with my dad on a showing, and in the backyard of this property, there were dogs that used to live in this vacant house, and kids in the next door neighbor's yard would throw hot dogs into their yard. Well, I really liked hot dogs as a 4-year-old boy, and I found one in the grass while my dad was showing these clients, and it was covered in ants, and that didn't slow me down at all. So I just started mowing down on this hot dog, and my dad's clients saw like me eating this disgusting hot dog. And the next thing I remember is I'm like in the kitchen sink, and they're like washing my mouth out. And I have no idea if I ruined my dad's sale or not, but that's my first memory of real estate. And then
so
kind
you're
of
an SOB ant man. Got it.
SOB, and I like eating ants with my hot dogs, little garnishment on them. And then a few years later, I realized that like early on, there was literally zero interest I had in real estate. Because what I associated with real estate was sitting in a room in the corner with like one Lego brick that I was allowed to touch, and I wasn't allowed to say or move, right? Because I was sitting in my dad's closings with his clients. So it was interesting that it was never something that was like exciting to me or something that I really ever thought that I would do. But, you know, fast forward, I finished high school. Things didn't go the way that I thought they were going to go. I was really big into wrestling and thought I was going to get a scholarship and go to school in wrestling. Ended up, getting hurt my senior year, and that kind of torpedoed all those plans. And ultimately started working for a tree removal company, climbing trees at 17, 18 years old. My dad wasn't a big fan. So, like any doting, loving father would do, he made me an offer that I couldn't refuse. And I started working for him. And it was cool. I started to realize that the business was way different than what I had associated with it when I was younger. And I got started working in my dad's brokerage firm at 18, and subsequently got my real estate license at 20, got my broker's license at 23, then got my multi-jurisdictional licenses at 25 and 26, became a managing broker when I was 28, and I've been doing that for actually 27, and then I've been doing that for about 5 years now.
And how old were you when you were licensed? How long, or not how old you were, but how long ago was that?
So I got licensed, officially got my license in 2006, but I started working in real estate in 2004. One of the good things I'll say that my dad did make me do is my dad owned a title company, a mortgage company, and a real estate company. Before I got my license, he made me work for all three companies. So I was a gopher admin for real estate. Then I worked for the title company doing processing, paperwork, post-closing stuff. And then I became worked for as an admin person for the loan officers, seeing the underwriting process, getting approvals, because my dad had a brokerage, a branch of a small brokerage firm at the time. So it was really good once I got my real estate license, because I kind of had a good solid foundation of how everything just kind of tied together.
Okay, so before, when you were more of just an agent and not the broker, how would you describe your your sales style, or what would be your unique selling proposition in terms of what you were competing against back then?
So it was tough. I mean, technology was definitely there in 2005, 2006 when I was first getting started. One of the things is my dad was good in a lot of ways. I think a lot of people have made the assumption that because I worked for my dad and he's been successful for 50 years, that obviously I just kind of got the benefit of that. And in reality, when I started working with my dad, he was like, dude, you're not, like, I'm way too busy running 3 companies. I can't help you. You're going to mentor with this agent and this agent and this agent, and you're going to pay him half of whatever commission you make to learn how to do this business the right way. And I can help fill in the blanks, but you got to do it yourself. So I very quickly realized, like, I'm not going to get this handed to me. I've got to go out and I've got to grind. And so I was like, well, what do I do? I'm 20 years old. I can't grow facial hair. I went on a listing appointment. The guy asked me if I rode my bicycle there because he didn't think I had a driver's license on a $700,000 listing appointment. And, you get those objections, and there's literally nothing I can do other than, like, draw a mustache on my face for them to think that I'm older. So it was challenging. It was really challenging early on because I had to overcome it. And so what I realized is one of my mentors that I met early on, he goes, hey man, you aren't going to be able to do anything other than wait it out. So you have to know more about real estate than everyone else. Become a student of the process. Become a student of the business. And I did that. I 100% didn't have the best grades in high school or middle school because I didn't care about it. I didn't go to college. I went straight into real estate, but because I was interested in it, I literally just gobbled it up. Whatever I could get my hands on and sink my teeth into, I did.
No, I love it. And I like the honesty regarding college because I didn't go to college either. And I think sometimes, I have that deep insecurity about it where, it gets brought up to me, like people are assuming, oh, Dustin, where'd you go to school? And I'm just like, I didn't. I had a child when I was 21, and I had to work full time and support the kid. So going back, and I know you hate tooting your own horn.
Oh, sure.
But production wise, like before you were managing broker, what kind of production were you doing on a year-to-year basis, and kind of describe, how your business scaled from year 1 to year 2? Yeah. And you don't need exact numbers now looking back, but just kind of the basics.
So my year 1, I think I might have sold 2 or 3 houses, and those were my dad just taking pity on me. But luckily I lived in his house and had very little expenses. So it was good. I was able to figure it out. Year 2, so 2007, right before the bottom fell out, I really figured out a niche that I started to work, and it was predominantly in new construction, helping builders write non-contingent contracts. Our company at the time had basically a guaranteed sale program, so I'm very familiar with those. And in my second year, I sold 52 houses for about 20 million in volume. So I think I made $400,000 as a 21-year-old kid. And that was such a bad thing because I was not responsible at all. But at that point, it was like, dude, all bets are off. This is over. And then God looked down on me and was like, this dude needs to be humbled, and wrecked the United States real estate economy in 2008. And then I went to making $30,000 a year. So it was very humbling. I had some success early on, and that happened. And then fast forward, I actually had to learn how to be a real estate agent. I just didn't have the benefit of a crazy awesome seller's market. So I learned, right? I really learned through 2008, 9, 10. Going into 11, I started to take my real estate team very seriously, and I hired a real estate coach. And I started doing the Brian Buffini model, working by referral, and then kind of tweaking my own funnels in there as well. Really started taking it seriously. And so from 2011, I think I did 30 transactions. In 2012, it was 35. 2013, things started to come together. I think I hit, it was 41 transactions. 2014, we did 81 transactions. And then my last year running a team and doing individual production in 2015, we sold 120 units for 35 million in volume. And our average sale price was 3 something. So we sold a lot of units, but our volume wasn't as high because we focused Prince William County and South, which the average sale price was 330 in those markets.
So that was you still doing, were you doing Buffini that whole time?
Yep. I did one-to-one coaching all the way through 2015 when I transitioned into my managing broker role. And then last year, when I joined Pearson Smith, my first full year with Pearson Smith, they allowed me to sell while also doing management duties. And so I basically took everything that I had learned over the years. I used that extensive database that I had compiled over the years of doing it. And last year I tracked it. I just did right at 9 million in volume. It was 25 closed transactions last year, and I worked 10 hours a week on my real estate business. So I ended up figuring it out. It was something like $450 an hour for my time, which I was really, really proud of, because I always, when I'm coaching and working with different people, I'm always trying to have them focus on really the things that matter. And really my life was kind of messed up when I was selling 120 houses because I worked 100 hours a week. And when I finally understood like the value of your time and what is your hourly earnings, it was really empowering to me, because then when I was like, dude, I just made well over 6 figures working 10 hours a week as like my side hustle. Like I could be doing Scentsy candles or Amway. Like I'm not making $200,000 a year for 10 hours worth of work a week. So that's when I really started being like, this is pretty cool, being able to leverage those skills and those things like that. Not to toot my own horn, but like the importance is, if I could go back and sell less houses but have a much higher hourly rate and a better quality of life, I would do it totally different going back.
Yeah, and I understand that, but looking back, and you're going from 40 or 50 transactions a year to immediately in 1 year jumping up to 120. Like, how much do you put on that as just the regular scaling and you getting some repeat and referrals? Or was there something in the coaching or something that you did from a marketing standpoint that jumped you to that?
So a little bit, I would attribute it to 3 things. One, growing up, right? Like I grew up while learning real estate. I matured, like I became an adult. So the grow up factor and actually treating it like a business and running it like a business and being a leader on my team, that would be 1. 2, the market getting better, right? Like it was much harder to sell houses in 2009 than it was in 2015. It just was. There was more houses to sell, and they were selling for more money than they were in 2009. And then the coaching that I had was somebody who had done it before me, giving me the playbook that I needed because I just didn't know. My dad never sold real estate anywhere close to the volume that I was selling come 2013, 2014, 2015. He was very, very successful in his own right, but he diversified. He went with the option of, I want to own a real estate company, a mortgage brokerage, and a title company and make money through all of these different avenues, both active and passive, versus I just want to sell a crap ton of houses. And so I didn't even have my dad anymore to really lean on in that regard. So I had to find someone, and I realized you got to pay those people. So I hired that coach. The coach never told me anything that I was just like blew my mind. But what they did do is they were like, Richard, you're not prioritizing the things that matter most. You're reacting to your clients, right? You're not disciplined in scheduling your day, time blocking activities, and prioritizing based on what's actually making you money and what works. And I think someone, and I've said it on a previous podcast, is someone finally was like, you're a yes man. For every person you say yes to, you're telling the rest of the world no. So you need to understand no is way more beneficial to you than the word yes. You need to be super selective with yes. And I was like, all right, I'll try that. And it's helped tremendously.
So when you got better into time blocking, and I'm just trying to dive deep in here because probably 95% of the agents listening to this, have never done and aspire to do 120 transactions, whether that's a good quality of life or anything. That's kind of where they're trying to get to.
Sure.
So what were you doing on a day-to-day basis? Normally I see like expired withdrawals or really picking up the phone, the old Mike Ferry way of calling your sphere of influence. Like what were you doing to attain the majority of your business?
So I won't call my mom on Christmas. So I'm definitely not calling a stranger to ask them if they want to sell their house. That's just me personally. And one of the great things is that I was always a limiting belief in my mind. Hey, Richard, if you don't pick up the phone and cold call people, you're never going to be successful. And my coach, got to give a lot of credit where credit is due, was like, no. If you don't want to call people, that's fine. You just need to be the best at what you do, right? You have to be the best at it. And I was like, all right, I'm going to be the best at building relationships. I'm going to be the best at asking for business from the people that support and endorse my business. I'm going to buy some leads online because at the time they were cheaper than they are now. And it was a good passive way. And I was good with follow-up. Once I'd connected with somebody, I didn't have a problem calling them. And then we did a lot of direct mail as a follow-up on any transaction we did, right? So our rallying cry was, we close a deal, we get 3 deals from that one deal, right? If we get less than 3 deals from one transaction we did, then we failed. That was a failure, right? So the mindset shift to, I have to do direct marketing, I have to run Facebook ads, I have to door knock, I have to do open houses, I have to cultivate and create more opportunities using my inventory and the clients I'm working with. If I don't do that, then I'm really missing out on the opportunity, because it's scientifically proven that people you work with during the transaction are most likely to refer you during that time than they are after, because it's top of mind. And so that was a huge game changer for us when we really were just like, hey, we're in our weekly pipeline. We're going through it. Okay, great. We got this listing. Great. Have we picked up any business from it? No. What are we doing wrong? How do we fix it? So it was very much so a review and refine process. We got to review what's going on. What can we change? How do we tweak it? Fiddle with the dials, set it and forget it.
And that's probably a hole in my business. I always think, if somebody's knocking on my door because they just did a roofing job or a window job, and they said, hey, Susan and George down the street wanted us to let everybody know that they were really happy with the work. Who are a couple people in the neighborhood that you would refer, or that needs a window or a roof? And I always mentally think of, this is uncomfortable for me, it's probably going to be uncomfortable for them. So I avoid all of those conversations. Yeah. So did you have like a specific script or a time in the transaction where you would say and ask for the referral?
Yeah, so I tried for a long time, and I had some people give me some advice here and took some classes. I don't know how I can directly attribute this to, but people were like, hey, when you get a new buyer, when they're at the settlement table, ask for business, because that's when they're the happiest with you. When you're working with a seller, when you list their house, ask for more business, because of the love-hate, the whole love-hate graph timeline. The longer you work with a seller, the less they love you. So they love you the most up top when they first sign with you, and the longer it takes to sell their home, the more they're tired of your BS. And then at settlement, you're just hoping that they don't hate you at that point. Whereas the buyer, they start the process really not knowing, and then you deliver on an expectation you set up front, and at the end, they're buying their new dream home, they love you, so you ask for the referral at the end. We tried that, it worked okay. What worked the best was listening for cues, right? So if a seller thanked me for doing something, right? Hey, this seller, call me up. Thank you for taking care of whatever that was. That was my cue to ask for a referral. Hey, you know what? The absolute best way you can show me your gratitude is if you help endorse my business. If you know anybody that's thinking about buying or selling a home, I would love the opportunity, not for you to sell me to them, but for me to just meet them and share with them what I'm doing with you and how I can help them through the same process. And then for a buyer, it's the same thing. Oh, thank you for coming to the home inspection today. You're welcome. I'm always happy to do what I'm actually getting paid to do. But in addition to that, the best way you can thank me is if you know anybody else in the same situation as you that's looking to make a move, I would love to meet them. Can you just keep me in mind? That's all I'm asking for. So when they ask you, when they thank you, they're already in their mind thinking, that I owe this person something. So you have to read into that and take advantage when you can.
Oh, I think psychologically it feels very similar to when my 13-year-old daughter, when I say, Charlotte, I'm so proud of you, advanced academic honor roll. And she's like, if you're really proud of me, maybe you let me go to Costa Rica on this school trip.
Dude, it sounds like Charlotte, she should be teaching classes, because it's 100% true. You got to strike while the iron's hot. And a lot of times, something goes sideways in a transaction, you don't feel like you can ask, right? Like the ask isn't there. So you have to take advantage when the ask is there. And that's simply, thank you. Okay, cool, trigger, boom. I got to ask them for help now.
So when you were at peak a few years ago at 120 transactions, what did your team look like then? How many, did you have like a couple buyer's agents or?
So I had a partner, and in all transparency, my partner was my mother. And the great thing about her is she was my mom, so we could call it like it was, spade's a spade, right? And that was good. But she had completely complementary skill sets to me. She was very much so administrative. She was all about compliance, getting the paperwork done. She was, if you needed your hand held, she was the person to do it. And I was none of those things. So we 100% over the time we worked together, starting out very early on in 2007, just as a partnership, we defined our roles and knew which one was going to be responsible for what. I 100% went on every listing appointment. I was the listing appointment guy. Like, I loved it. I practiced it. I role played it. That was my thing. It was my jam. It was the most fulfilling part of the process for me, was winning a competitive listing. Loved it. Super hungry. Jazzes me up to this day. She hated them. So she would go with me maybe, but she would say nothing other than, I'm here also to help. And then we had, as we grew, so like in 2015, we had 2 buyer's agents on the team. So there was a guy that had gotten out of the military. He came, he joined the team the year before, but he left. He didn't re-enlist and went full-time. And I felt very compelled to want to make sure that he succeeded, because he was like 6 years away from retirement, and he quit that to come work on my team. So I was like, I got to make sure that dude's successful. And then my sister-in-law also worked on the team as a buyer's agent part-time. So yeah, between them, I mean, I was involved in every single transaction that took place, which was something because I just felt like I needed to be. I talked to all the clients. I wanted to ensure the customer experience was very important, because so much of our business was built on referral, past clients, sphere of influence. But that was basically it. So I had my partner, Jennifer. I had 2 buyer's agents, myself, and then I had 2 admin assistants. I had an executive assistant who was basically just for me, right? She didn't really do much for the rest of the team. They would ask her, but then she would ask me if she could do it, because I was the busiest. And then we had somebody that was kind of like her assistant, who did social media, engagement, just sold letters, like basically the procedural stuff that we knew was just going to get done. She took care of a lot of that. And that was it. That was the structure.
So, and what percentage of listings in that 120 year was listings versus buyers?
The 120, I would probably say it was either 60-40 or 65-35 listings.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're talking, about 10 transactions a month, which, some agents will say like, hey, how are you doing that much, or even handling that much? But really the tougher part is if you have 60-40, you're doing 4 buyer transactions a month. That's a lot, because, when the market's hot, the buyers are like, hey, I need to see this house tonight. And it sounded like you had some buyer's agents that would be able to assist and open some doors. But that's a lot on your plate.
It is. Yeah, it is. What I found is I'm a buyer's agent at heart. Practically speaking, I'm a listing agent, right? Because I understand you can leverage listings way easier than you can leverage buyers. Buyers are a very personal process. You can only put 1 buyer in your car at a time and drive them around and show properties. I think at one point I was servicing 15 active buyers at one point, and I couldn't get through 3 or 4 showings with 1 buyer without 3 other buyers calling me to schedule more showings. And I think around that time, I started to realize, like, I can't do buyer's agency by myself. If that's what I want to do, I just have to know what the limits are, and the limits are going to be based on time, right? We all have the same 24 hours in the day. And I still have to fit in my family, my 4 kids, having some sort of quality of life outside of work. So I realized, even though I hated listings, because I do not like conflict, and I always interpreted when a seller was unhappy that it was always just going to be like, I was going to get punched in the face every time a seller was upset. I just convinced myself of it. So I didn't like listings, but I had to get to the point where I realized the necessity of them and where I wanted to go with my business and what was happening. So for the listings, it was more out of necessity than anything. But to this day, I prefer working with buyers. But I will list your house and sell it so fast, because I can do so many more of them behind a desk.
Yeah, you can. I'm at that stage now that you were just describing with the buyers, and now, I've taken away all Zillow advertising and anything that would bring me buyers. I prefer the listings, not just for time reasons, but I prefer the listings. I don't mind, and I enjoy representing them on the buy side when they're listing. But what I don't have the patience for is if they're a brand new buyer, they're not a referral, they don't know me personally, for whatever reason, mentally, like you were just describing, you love to sit down for a listing appointment. You like the competitiveness and describing your strategy and trying to win them over. I would have a hard time keeping that same mentality with every buyer of winning them over, because in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh my God, this person feels indecisive. And you want to give your best service wise to make sure that they're, you're doing everything you can to find them the right house. But when you get a couple of those buyers that have voided on 4 or 5 deals on home inspection, and you just realize like, look, this isn't going to work out, it starts to like sour a little bit. And you're like, I rather prefer a seller, that's in a post occupancy that needs to move, or that just wants to move into a bigger house, than just somebody that's like floating the idea or basically indecisive.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. I mean, you get to that point, and what I have always tried to do is dance this fine line of wanting to still be passionate about what I do and not absolutely become hateful and resentful of the people I work with. Because it takes one bad apple, one bad experience to really harden your heart and jade you against the process. When I was working 100 hours a week, every week, sold 120 houses a year, I wouldn't trade nothing to go back to that. I would never do it, because I hated people, hated them. The phone would ring and I would answer it, and they'd be like, hey, so-and-so gave me your information. I'd be like, sorry, you're breaking up. Click. Like, I don't even want a new client, right? Like, money's not an issue, all that, but my quality of life sucks. So I think that that's something we see. I mean, they talk about it in NAR. I heard a study. I don't remember what conference I was at. The top 3 reasons why top producers leave the business, right? Retirement. Obviously, we have an aging demographic in the realtor community, so retirement makes sense, right? The second one is financial mismanagement, which is crazy to me. But then again, we're salespeople, we're not finance people, so we don't know how to manage. But the third is burnout. Like, literally, you just hate the job so much, and you're like, because you're doing it on such a high level that you just go, I would rather flip burgers at McDonald's. Not a knock on that, but just something where I go in, it's mindless, and I don't have people just hating me for the sake of hating me. And I think what we have to do as real estate professionals is we have to be anchored and rooted in something that is our passion in this business. And it has to be so clearly focused in our minds that we don't get to that point, because you'll spiral, and then you won't be effective, and then you won't be your best self, and you'll continue to ride the real estate roller coaster of having wins and then taking losses. But yeah, I mean, coming from someone who has been there and done it on a high level, going back and doing it again on a high level, I would do things very, very differently.
So with that said, how did you remain upbeat during those setbacks?
Well, so I mentioned earlier, like being a student and wanting to learn. Well, when I learned, and I definitely don't know everything about real estate, but when I learned a lot, like when I was able to function at a high level doing real estate transactions, and understanding it and getting the certifications and the broker license and all that, I realized what's next, right? Because if you're not growing, you're dying. So then I started to shift my mindset to becoming more a student of personal development and personal growth. And I know that it's like super cliche. People were like, oh yeah, I'm all into self-help and stuff. But you know what? If you find something that empowers you to do something you otherwise wouldn't do, or it better equips you with the skills you need to be more successful at how you earn a living, you should invest as much time as you can set aside into that as you can. And I started to do that. So my perspective changed, like my paradigm on life changed. Instead of being like, hey, I'm competing against all these agents, I'm going to get put out of business by a disruptor, all these things that I would worry about, this mindset of scarcity. I started to focus on all of the opportunity out there and really trying to be in tune with that, right? So when I had to start through the personal development journey and reading these books and going to seminars and all this stuff, and there's these very similar underlying themes with all of it. And a lot of it is your perspective and how your outlook is. So your attitude is going to shape so much of where you're going. If your attitude is pointing down, that's where your business is going to end up in 6 months. If your attitude is looking at all the opportunities and the positive things and the optimism in your business, that's probably where your business is going. So when I realized the correlation there, I really started to delve deep into the personal development and focusing on the things that I actually had control of and letting go of the things I didn't have control of.
Yeah, it's funny because I wish, because I think we're similar in that we both love a lot of the business books, the self-help books. But Devin will tease me all the time because I feel like I've read everything. A lot of them have a lot of parallels and similarities.
Sure.
And I will get really cynical if I like go to a Gary Vee or a Tony Robbins thing and I'm just like, oh, I've heard this like 1,000 times and I'm just complaining to her. And she's just like, you're so cynical. You know, you have to understand that most of these people are hearing this for the first time, and you need to just step back and reabsorb what you've already heard just so it'll settle in more. But, you know, I agree with you. A lot of those books that we've kind of read through, when I have gone through some transactions where, you know, I'm the fourth or fifth agent on the transaction, and I knew really quickly going into it that, okay, this is not a house problem. This is like, help me help you problem with the client. And what I found is me putting the same type of pressure that you put on yourself when you were listing that many houses, and that guilt of like, okay, this is my fault their house isn't selling. What am I doing more? The people that have given me the hardest time, if I have just stuck with them and said, you know what, no matter what they say, no matter what they do, I'm going to keep delivering them and keep surprising them with new things, new ideas on what I'm trying to sell their listing. Even the ones that you don't sell, you look back, and because you dealt with that one person, the next person that other people think are crazy or just difficult, you look back and you're like, man, this person's a piece of cake. I've dealt with much worse than this.
Oh, for sure.
I think all of those books do help. So what is your business looking like today, Richard?
Well, so you know what? I had to come, well, one thing, at the end of every year, I do a planning day, right? Just clear the day. I'm at home. I typically meditate beforehand, really kind of clear my mind, figure out what it is I want to accomplish. And a couple of years ago, I realized that I needed to include my wife, because happy wife, happy life. And she's way smarter than me. And I attribute a lot of where I am today to her, because she will call me on my shit, like 100%. And I need someone like that, but in a loving way. Like, she'll be like, dude, you're being super hard-headed. I don't think you're looking at this clearly. You're emotionally involved and your decisions suck right now, but I'll give you a hug. And then she'll give me a hug. And then I can accept that, because that's what I need, and she knows. And she's just been super instrumental. I don't know what I was just talking about, because I just started talking about my wife, and she's awesome. And
I get it, because I try to do the same thing. With Devin, and like you were saying, you weren't the best student in high school, and neither was I. And for me, when I have those moments, like Devin's like, look, we're going to business plan together once a week. We're going to sit down. And the minute that it's not my decision and me saying like, we're doing this, I start to feel like the kid in the classroom that can't sit still. I'm like, all right, come on, let's get through this. Let's get through this. Let's get through this. I got things to do. And it feels like a chore to me when all she's trying to do is what's best for us, because she's an agent as well. But it's hard for me, really hard.
It is. And this didn't happen overnight. This was a process. And so, anybody that's in coaching with me or that's worked with me, or if you're familiar with Brian Buffini, he has his 5 circles, which are how you set goals. His 5 circles, you have finance, you have professional, you have personal, you have health, and you have spiritual. And then I add a 6th, which is personal development, right? So I think personal development is so important that I make it one of your 6 overall goals that you should be setting each and every year. So it kind of follows that model. And then I sit down and I get very, very specific with what I want to accomplish and how I'm going to go about doing it. So if it's going to require money or an investment, like the easy ones to do are health goals, right? Hey, I want to lose weight. It's like, okay, great. How much weight? By when? What is going to be your approach to losing weight? Is it going to be diet? Is it going to be exercise? Is it going to be a combination of both? How often are you going to go to the gym? What gym? Do you have it in your budget to pay for that gym membership? What are you going to take out of your budget in order so you be able to afford that new gym member? Like, you have to get very, very involved and detailed so there's no excuse later. You know very specifically and clearly what you're going to do. And the one that was super eye-opening when I brought my wife in and she started being involved was I was setting my financial money goal. And I put this just ridiculous, I was like, hey, next year I want to make $500,000 working 25 hours a week. And then I want to have another $500,000 in completely passive income through 6 ancillary businesses that I'm going to start this year. She sat down. She was like, it's a little ambitious, Mr. Bridges. I was like, dude, I can do it. You can't tell me I can do it. Go ahead, tell me. I have Marty McFly complex. Tell me I can't do it. I will do it just to prove you and then quit, just to prove a point, right? So don't tell me I can't do it. And she doesn't. She sits down and she's like, what's that going to cost you? I was like, well, what are you talking about? She's like, how much time do you genuinely think that's going to cost you? I was like, it's going to cost a lot of time. Like, I got to start 6 businesses. What are you talking about? She's like, exactly. So who's paying for it? And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, well, you're paying with it with your time. You're paying with it with my time. You're paying with it with our 4 kids' time. So what's your priority? Because your goal tells me I'm not your priority. And I was like just a haymaker came out of like left field. She didn't punch me, but she should have, because that's basically, she verbally punched me. And I realized that isn't actually what I want. And I really, like, this was like 3 years ago. I had to completely reorient what my priorities were and figure out ways where I had to just work smarter. That I couldn't just continue to pay everything. I couldn't write checks with my mouth that I couldn't actually cash, you know? I needed to have the time. I needed to be protective of that. And that planning day, I attribute a ton of where I am today, because that's what kind of like equally yoked my wife and I, is that she had ownership in the goals that I was setting, so that when I was like, hey, I got to do this thing, she was like, I know, we planned it. I remember, we wrote it down. I was like, cool. So I don't get the pushback. So I need her support more than ever. And so we do that together. And that's really something that's been pretty integral.
Well, I just hope Devin won't be listening to this later.
It's once a year. We're not doing it weekly. So I will save you that. That's all I could do. I can be patient for like a day, 1 day a year. It's usually in November, probably right around Thanksgiving, where it's quiet. I'm not getting harassed. But yeah, just decompress, put it all on paper. And I usually do the legwork ahead of time, and then she comes in and sees where I'm at and then gives me her opinion. So she lets me do my process, and then she gets involved once it's done. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So when you try to go back a little bit, when you were doing the Buffini thing, and a lot of it you're probably still doing, but when you were, really focused on that coaching method, and like, I'm completely naive because like Eric, who we interviewed last week, I've never had a coach. But I've known people that have been in different coaching programs, and I've done like, I've had one agent that that paid for Buffini, and they had like a year's worth of cards. And I was like, I'll take these. And
yeah,
I mailed them out, religiously for probably 5 or 6 months, and then got so busy that I couldn't do it anymore. Right. So like, what was your process like for that? How dedicated were you for that? And how long were you consistent with it?
Why coaching worked well for me is because I'm a people pleaser, and I didn't want to disappoint my coach not getting the activities she told me to do done, right? It was easier for me to do the thing I didn't want to do than to come up with an excuse as to why I didn't do it and try and sell her on it. Like, don't get me wrong. There was times I sold her. I was like, listen, I was so busy. I was listing so many houses. And she was like, I know, but you're listing houses. That's business you already won. What are you doing to get more business? Because in 6 months, you're going to be crying. And I was like, I know. And then I would just basically stop making the excuses, and I would show up to those coaching calls or those coaching meetings, and I would have what she tasked me with done. And the crazy thing is she didn't tell me what to do. She asked me questions, and I was like, I know I need to do this. This is what will work. And she just held my feet to the fire. And that's really what it came down to. And when I needed somebody to give me an outside perspective, when I had this huge problem that was right here and I couldn't see past it, but she's got she's got the point of view where she can see everything out here to give me some insight, that was invaluable as well. So she was just a trusted advocate that I could lean on. And now in my life, I have coaches in all 6 of those areas of life. I have the finance coach, I have the spiritual coach, I have the personal coach. My wife and I, we do therapy. We do therapy every other week for my personal stuff. Not because our marriage is in shambles, but because we don't want my marriage to be in shambles. I have a financial coach. He helps me make smart decisions because I suck with money. I made $1 million one year and lost all of it the next year. Like, that's not something to be proud of. And then I have a real estate coach, and I have, a personal development health coach, like a personal trainer. So I'm a big advocate in having people that are going to support you get where you want to go as far as the goals you're setting for yourself.
Yeah, I did 2 weeks of therapy. Nothing bad going on in our relationship. And after each one, I would look at Devin and say, like, I won that session. And she's like, I don't think that this is for you, Dustin. This isn't like a competitive thing. And I was like, you see how much she was on my side? And Devin was like, no, this is not you. This is not at all what this is for. This is not a competition.
For sure. That's hilarious, man. That's super funny. And we weren't always, but there's times things happen in life. Maybe you only need it for like a certain period, right? Like, we're going through some stuff right now. We just need someone else, because communication is so important. And sometimes It's hard to hear the person you talk to all the time, to hear what they're actually saying, like to be able to listen. And so it's having somebody there that can help do that is great. So I realize, I think that's probably one of the keys there with the whole coaching thing and just personal development, is realizing you're not alone, and that if you're trying to do it all by yourself, you're probably going to fail way more than you need to. And so finding people that you can trust, whether you're financially paying them for that service, or you're just getting together and you're exchanging, basically you're bartering, like, hey, I do this and I can help you, and you do this and you can help me, and together, like iron sharpens iron, that type of thing. That is why I think it's so important to have those people in your corner.
Well, I think you having 6 different coaches, and you've been in coaching for so long, and you've been kind of to the peak of what most of these agents want to attain, is probably what makes you a good coach. Like what the coaching that you're doing in your free time and your spare time.
Sure.
So kind of talk a little bit about that.
So what I found with the coaching that I do is, one, I told you that I really got burned out in 2015. So I took that hard stop, went into management. I actually went to a company that in my employment contract said you're not allowed to sell real estate, because I knew that's what it was going to take. Because if I was contractually not allowed to sell real estate, the no was a lot easier than if I had an option. So I had to put myself in a situation where it's just like, hey, if you're trying to quit a bad habit, then you got to eliminate that, even the possibility of it, from all areas of your life. And that's what I did. And the reason that I did that is because at the end of 2015, after all of this success, after all of these sales that I had happened, and looking back and reflecting on it, I had really found that I was losing my passion for sales. Like I would go and win a listing, and instead of getting that, like being super amped, like, oh man, I beat out 8 other agents for this listing. Instead of being like, woo, woo, I would be like, that's what's expected, and not to knock on my dad or anything, but he was always like, saw my potential and would always push me like really hard. But sometimes it wasn't what I needed. And I remember a couple times coming back and he'd be like, hey, you had 5 listing appointments. It's like Mondays, like you had 5 listing appointments over the weekend. How'd they go? I was like, I took 4 of them. And he's like, why not 5? Why don't you take 5? And it was just like, so it wasn't ever good enough. And I was like, I don't even like, it's burning me out. People were disrespectful, like the whole thing. And so I really had to take a huge step back, did my planning day, talked to my wife, and really figured out, what is it about real estate that I loved? And once I kind of like dove pretty deep into what the passion was, the passion I realized was I just genuinely like helping people. That's very cliche. Like I know people help people in different ways, but not just helping people. I like solving problems, like problems that other people can't solve, right? So to feel like I did something and probably not a lot of other people could have helped you do that boom, fire me up. So then I realized, well, how do I do that on a bigger scale? How can I help people achieve stuff? Who needs help? And I was thinking about it. I was like, dude, 87% of agents fail out of the business by year 5. That is super sad. So sad. People just billions of dollars every year, I'm sure people are wasting and then failing out of this business. So I was like, dude, there's a need. I want to help. I know there's a lot of coaches out there in their own space. We all have our own unique take. And I think we match well with certain people, because personalities, some drive, some don't. And for me, I realized I could do a lot more good on this side of the table than I could continuing to sell houses. I was like, I'll let them have it. I'll let them have those houses. And then now I can focus on helping agents follow a plan, avoid the mistakes that I made, and I can give them the anecdotes and lessons that I've learned. And as I continue to try and grow, I can give those to them as well, and just try and make the process easier for them. That's what's empowering to me. When that that brand new agent gets their first transaction, and then they're just like when your client's buying their first home and they're thanking you, now they're thanking me that they got that first transaction. And I'm like, dude, you did it. You just needed a plan. You needed someone to nudge you. You needed someone to help you and guide you and show you the way. And that's super exciting. And that's way more rewarding now. So that's why I'm in this part of my life. But yeah, no, I'm just very passionate about helping and solving problems. So that's where I am and why I am.
Yeah. And I kind of go back and forth. I've considered doing coaching, not coaching myself, but going into a coaching, because I've heard the different pitches, and, Michael Jordan has a coach, Tiger Woods has a coach, all of these guys, they need accountability. But I'm a little bit like Eric in the aspect of, I crave such autonomy that I don't want to be accountable to anybody but myself. And it's,
well, let me challenge you with this. So there are definitely people that are coaches, and there are definitely people that are coachable, right? Students. If you find it, so what do they say? If you truly want to master something, teach it. So for you, maybe you're not the person who's the student, but in order to truly take you where you want to go, maybe you need to think in terms of how can I help other people by giving them the insights and things that I've learned in some sort of capacity. It doesn't need to be formal coaching or whatever, but maybe that's what helps you get to the next level, as opposed to, because I get probably as much, maybe more out of the coaching than the people that I'm coaching, probably, because when they're sitting there, I'm so in tune with what they're saying. When they make an observation, when they think of something that I think is super clever, dude, you better believe, like, if anybody who's in my coaching knows, I sit there and write notes the entire time. And I'm writing notes that are both for them, so I can send them the recap afterwards, but also for me, like, dude, that's pretty smart. I want to share that with everyone else. Like, dude, I'm growing. I'm always trying to grow. So as a coach, like, it's a win-win. It really is. It should be, at least. So that's maybe something I would challenge you to think in terms of is maybe if you having a coach isn't right, because that's just not where you are in your phase of life, maybe it is you can learn a lot by offering something that you know and you do exceptionally well and help others. You know, I know you're.
Yeah, I do that definitely in the classroom aspect, but I think you truly it gives you energy to mentor and help and assist agents. I just think it's just different personalities.
It is absolutely, and it does. I mean, I would say not everybody is going to want to do coaching. I think I have had some people come in and sit across the desk, and they're like, "What are you going to guarantee me?" And I go, jack shit, I ain't guaranteeing you anything, because you have to actually do the things we decide you're going to do together. And if you don't, then you're not going to see any results. And if you think it's going to happen overnight, get out of here. Like, I'm not going to be able to help. There is no quick fixes in real estate. The market moves in cycles. These things take 6 months. What you do today, you're planting seeds, you're going to reap the harvest in 6 months. Like, that's just the way that this works. So if it's somebody that has unrealistic expectations on what they're going to get out of a coach, a good coach is truly there to help unlock the potential that you haven't even tapped into yourself. That's it. So if your potential is laying so dormant that there's no way to unlock it, then you're probably not a candidate for coaching. And if you are thinking somebody, you're like, I've got room for improvement, I want to grow, then don't think in terms of what can somebody else do for you, but how can someone else help you do more for you, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that's the thing, is just taking ownership. I see so many people, especially in the real estate industry, you know, what they're focused on is they're focused on everybody else. They're not focused on their own stuff. And then they're blinded to the direction they're even heading in their business. So yeah, that's it. I mean, those are my couple takes on that.
Yeah. So if somebody wanted to reach out to you because they're interested in maybe getting into a affordable coaching program, you know, that offers them a lot of value and learn from everything, the mistakes that you've made, you know, the tips that you're going to be able to give them to kind of get where you were, if that's what's right for them and what they really desire, what's the best way that they can get in touch with you or get a hold of you regarding that?
So you can definitely reach out to me on Facebook Messenger. If we're friends and you don't have my contact information, you can friend request me. Would love to connect with you on social media. I'm typically on Facebook, but not like a ton. I just check it for messages. So it's just my name, Richard Bridges. And then email is probably the second best, because it comes right to my phone. I'm checking it constantly. I correspond with most of my coaching clients through email. And so that would be my name, richard.bridges @pearsonsmithrealty.com. And for this episode and this episode only, I'll give you my cell phone. It's 571-480-1333. You can text me, you can call me. So that's my contact information.
All right. So Richard, what is the best advice you've ever received in real estate?
Best advice I've ever received in real estate. Well, I can give you one that comes to mind as my dad. When I was got my first deal under contract, I started counting some dollars, figuring out what I was going to be spending it on. And he saw me. He's like, "What are you doing with that calculator? You don't do math." And I was like, "I'm doing math now. I'm figuring out what 3% of this is." And he goes, "I'm going to tell you something. You don't count your commission dollars until the check clears the bank. It's a surprise. You just let it happen. If you treat people the right way, the way that you would want to be treated, if you do right by people, you'll never have to worry about the amount of money that you make. And you certainly shouldn't be focused on the amount of money you're making during the process, because anything can happen." And so those kind of two things together, because my father was also a first responder. He was a firefighter the whole time he sold real estate. And he said, I didn't get into real estate and build a real estate company where I spent my whole life going out saving people's lives and helping them to turn around and then screw them on the other side. He was like, it's all about helping people. And that's always been great. I always try and treat people better. I always try and treat people better than they treat me. I always try and be as optimistic and as positive as I can be. You know, my goal every day is to out positive everyone else. So if you're going to be a negative Nelly, you're going to hate me. And that's the goal. And some days I'm good at it. Some days I'm not so good at it, but I try to do that every single day. So those three things I would say: don't count your commission until it's closed. Treat people honestly, fairly, better than how you would want to be treated. And the third thing is be positive, because optimism is the root of motivation. If you're optimistic, you're going to be able to do it. If you're pessimistic, you're going to only think about the reasons you can't do it.
Yeah, I think that is like some good, like a Yoda moment from your father, because, you know, if you've been in this business long enough, I managed to go 30 transactions when I was brand new without a single deal breaking down. And I thought, I was like, look, I'm just untouchable. Like nothing,
Wow.
nothing bad can come. Like I have this down to a science. Like I can fix all problems and I can do everything. And then I had a couple of them my second year where the buyer's agent was saying, oh yeah, everything's great. You know, talk to the lender. Everything's great. Hey, can you drop the financing contingency? Here's a clear to close letter, or, you know, whatever that they're giving me. And then day of or day before settlement, rug pulled out from underneath me. Oh, the money that they were getting from their family member isn't coming. And I am very much like your father, where Devin is like, we have to forecast our money, Dustin. You know, and if I see it in a spreadsheet, you know, I don't say jinx, I go way back, I say mush. And if I see it in a spreadsheet, I'm like, Devin, you effing mushed us. Like that transaction, you mushed us. And she's like, you're ridiculous. Like me putting in the spreadsheet has nothing to do with whether that transaction went through or not.
Oh yeah, man. Yeah. That's super funny. But yeah, I have had quite a few fall through, and I didn't always listen to his advice. And I tell you what, it hurts a lot more when you know how much you're missing out on than it does when you're blissfully ignorant to the fact.
Well, yeah. And if you just assume, like pessimistically, like the way an attorney does, that every single deal is not going to close, mm-hmm. then you're emotionally separated from it, and you can provide your client the best service, and you're happy in the end when they do close. Yeah. So for those, this like kind of segues perfect into our final hard-hitting question. When you had those transactions that would break down,
yes,
what was your favorite drink of choice?
Shirley Temple's.
Get out of here.
I love the girliest drinks on the planet. No offense to girls that don't like girly drinks. That's what I was. My wife and I will go order drinks at a bar, and they will 100% of the time give her drink to me and my drink to her, because if it's a fuzzy navel or a buttery nipple or like has any type of fruit juice in it of any kind, alcoholic wise, I'm drinking it. Like Seagram's, I'm keeping them in business. I love it. I have diabetes because of how much I love sugar. And
well, I like the fact that you're confident enough to be the butt of your own joke. Because I think any agent that listens to this towards the very end, especially the ones in our brokerage, they're going to give you crap about this. Like, I don't think I'm going to see you order a drink from now on without you getting like one of the little swords with like 6 cherries on it.
Dude, I used to collect the umbrellas, man. Those things actually work. They like open and close. See, that's the thing. If you're getting a drink and all you're getting is a buzz when you're done drinking it, you're not getting some little tchotchke to take with you home, then you're missing out, right? It's just about trying to take advantage. I'm just trying to take advantage of the situation, get free stuff.
All right. So you already gave the audience a way to get a hold of you. My name is Dustin Fox. You can reach me at dustin.fox@Pearson Smith Realty, or you can give me a call at 703-927-1461. Text me, call me anytime, and if I'm in an appointment, I'll get back to you as soon as I can. But Richard, thank you for coming on, sharing your wisdom, and I really appreciate it.
All right, buddy. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. See ya.
All right.